live your best life and don't be afraid of failure. Chase those dreams, be spontaneous, recognize when you're in a rhythm which is actually detrimental to your progress. It's half the time you're not even aware of it because you don't stop to think about it. You don't stop to think with a partner to talk about it. It's just taking a moment. Life's so fast paced, so much stuff's all happening. You just have to occasionally just take a step back and just do a little health check. That's it.
Welcome to another episode of Success with Purpose, where we help mentor you into becoming a more successful version of yourself. We do this through giving you access to mentors you typically would never have the opportunity to connect with. We explore their journeys, their experiences, their life-changing events, their fields of expertise, and most importantly, their purpose. My name is Harry Goldberg, husband to an incredible woman, father of two amazing daughters, host, interviewer, and interrogator of this podcast. And now, just before we learn from yet another exceptional guest, if you find value from these conversations, please make sure to like and subscribe below, leave a review. It really does make a difference. And of course, share with someone else who's going to find value. Now, listen in, pay attention, take some notes, enjoy. Let's begin. Josh Waldhorn, welcome.
Hello, Harry Goldberg. How are you? Very formal.
Very well. You remembered my surname. I'm impressed.
Yeah.
Look, I'm looking forward to this conversation. It's going to be a little bit, in some ways, a little bit unique of a conversation, which I really like. It's going to be one of those where we really just dive into your journey and just explore how you got to where you are today. For the listeners, the reason why Josh is on this podcast is I met him at an event that he was a keynote speaker at, and about fatherhood, and he's got a really interesting and intriguing and insightful and in many ways inspiring journey to share through a significant number of challenges. I
must say, after that talk, the number of people that came and thanked me for my courage was worried me a little bit. So I thought, have I overshared? Have I overshared here? But look, that was one fairly significant aspect of my life. There's a few other ones which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Yeah, we definitely will. Like, I mean, in terms of you as success, I think just being able to have the courage to be who you are is already enough of a success. But there have been a whole number of really significant milestones you've hit throughout your journey, and we'll explore those as well.
Yeah. I think the courage to be yourself should be everybody's success, to be honest. Do you want me to talk about sort of success?
Please.
I don't particularly feel like a successful person, truth be told.
Mm-hmm.
That's a word that means so many things to so many different people.
What does it mean to you?
Well, look, I guess I think if you'd asked me 30 years ago, I would have given you a very different answer. I think it changes over the years as you get older. I think it's changed over the years. I don't think it's something that you can fast forward. I don't think there are steps you can skip in, I suppose, the maturity levels. And I think looking back as a young man, starting out in life, you're really finding yourself. You've no idea who you are. No idea. It's pretty much a clean slate. You've had the warm embrace of your parents for, hopefully most of your childhood. And then you're pretty much cut loose, you're set free, and you want to be. I mean, you're chomping. You can see now as a parent why that's sort of sad for parents when that moment comes. But yes, unfortunately, you don't have the maturity to do anything but compare yourself to other people. It's a very blinkered, especially I grew up in London. It was very blinkered. It was very much must get ahead. What's this person earning? Hang on, they've bought a BMW and I'm nowhere near being able to buy a BMW. It was very much surrounded around money and living your life by other people's interpretation of success and not my own, because I wouldn't have a clue at that point. So I guess that was my only real reference point, growing up was other people, and it's changed significantly because as I've become older, um, you start thinking, well, first of all, I know myself a lot better.
Mm-hmm.
I know what I like, what I don't like, what upsets me, what doesn't, the traits in other people that bother me and the ones that don't. Um, you can only acquire that with experience. I mean, there really is no way of fast tracking that. I don't think. You can disagree with me, but you do start asking yourself what really that whole existential question is. What the hell is this all about?
Mm-hmm.
Really, what is this all about? Am I really just existing from day to day until I die, and then that's my life, done, dusted? Um, and obviously, hopefully the answer with most people is no, I don't want to just exist. Existing isn't enough. Um, I want to have, I want to have a legacy that's worth remembering. That's something I kind of came up with for myself, my own little mantra.
Mm-hmm.
A legacy that's worth remembering. I want to be the author of my own ambition. Um, do I want to do what I've done for the last? I mean, I'm 50, just turned 54. Do I want to do what I've done for the last 30 years, which I suppose is, well, 34 years, call it. Which is when I went out into the world. Do I want to do the same again for the next 30? And to be honest, the idea of that fills me with dread, Harry. The idea of, and I, my little sort of visual analogy of doing the same thing is pushing that supermarket trolley down the aisles of Coles, putting the same tins of frickin' tuna fish in it, week on, week out for the next
And
25, 30 years. It makes me
until you're
feel,
too old to be able to do it yourself, right?
well,
Okay.
the shopping trolley might become a support for me, but no, the idea of that just fills me with absolute dread. And I recognize as well that at 54, and look, I'm not making out I'm any kind of life guru at all, but I have lived through some things, and we'll talk about some of those shortly. But um, I realize I've actually never been better qualified to live my life. I've never had the tools that I have now, that I've earned over the years. I've never had them. So why on earth in middle age would I decide to turn my back on that opportunity that I now have? And
Mm.
I see it in so many people. They start to slow down. They start to sort of feel conquered by middle age and by their creaking, aching body that's starting to sort of, creep in. Um, and I think it really is the biggest danger to middle age is the comfort zone. Just finding a nice little rhythm that you're happy. Just oh, let the young people do that. I don't have the energy anymore for that. I mean, it's just BS of the largest. It's the biggest disservice anyone can do to themselves, I think. I don't want to waste the time that I have left. So, I don't want to talk about the fantasies. I don't want to talk about things that should have done. I could have done, but I didn't. The sweet spot of what really makes me happy or what makes me tick. I have to action them. I'm in my mind, running out of time, and there's a few things which we'll talk about that have kind of amplified that. So to answer your question, in a roundabout way, for me, my ongoing success, whatever that looks like, is totally down to whether I'm going to be brave enough to accept the challenge of remaining outside of the comfort zone. I need to continue to pursue the best of myself. And if I do, regardless of whether I succeed or not, if I do, I will have been successful. I will have had a successful life. That's kind of it. Risk
Okay.
taking and being brave.
Okay, so let me feedback some of what I've heard from you, because you summarized it quite nicely towards the end, and there are just a few questions I got about it. Because you started talking about like this kind of like this this bigger picture existential kind of crisis. Like, am I just existing? Like, you decide, like, you got to decide that's not enough to just exist. And then you started talking about like big picture legacy worth remembering. Then you started talking about being the author of your own ambition. So it's not just about what other people are seeing of whether you just existed or not. Now it's, are you actually pursuing that ambition? And then you started diving down into, I don't want to waste my time. I don't want to be using a shopping trolley as support and just keep doing the same thing day in, day out for the rest of my life. And you started talking about, do I have the courage, or your actual words were, am I brave enough to accept the challenge of being outside of my comfort? And
Yeah, pretty much.
I
Well,
heard,
hopefully you can see there's a common thread between all of those
yeah,
statements that you've
yeah, there is, there definitely is.
yeah.
The common thread I'm finding is that you don't want to waste your life filled with regret and fear.
Well, that's I think that's a little extreme, Harry. Regret and fear. It's more a case of feeling like I've justified, the life I've been given, that
Mm,
I haven't held back, that I haven't just taken the easy route, because I want to be, apart from anything else, I want to be a role model to my children.
mm-hmm.
And we'll talk about it
Is
later, but
that is that the legacy you're talking about?
the legacy is I want to have a legacy of having lived.
Okay.
I want my children to see a man that went for it, a man that was brave, the man that went on a reality TV show, which I'm sure we'll talk about as well at some point. Um, I don't want them to go, yeah, Dad was great, we loved him, we'll never forget him. See you, Dad. That's it's not enough for me. It's
Yeah.
it's not enough for me, and I want that to be something that gives them the impetus to do the same. Because really, um, and look, I know you can never say never, but I don't feel in my current iteration of myself that in the time I have, I'm going to do anything huge for humanity.
Mm.
I'm very unlikely to start a charity that will change the world even a degree. It feels a little too late. I never say never. So and I'm not going to invent something. I'm not going to be an Elon Musk that's going to shape or reform attitudes and the world for hopefully for the better. So what have I got left? And yes, a lot of people would say, be rich and retire. Yeah, look, money would be great. I don't really want to be a pensioner, wondering how I'm going to pay for my next electricity bill. But really, what I've got left is my experience of the world and
Mm.
the attitude with which I embraced it. That's it.
And so what are the main reasons for that? Like, what are the main reasons you want to? You mentioned that you want your legacy of inspiring your kids to be able to have the impetus to do the
I
same.
want there to be stories. I want them to be able to look back fondly at this lunatic dad that wasn't a Financial Times, or Fin Review, reader and peering over while they're eating their toast in the morning. You
Mm-hmm.
know, um, I want to have felt involved and energetic, energize them. And I've written down a couple of words, keeping the spirit of adventure and curiosity alive. That I think can only lead to a legacy worth remembering. But that's something I feel like if I don't keep that spirit of adventure and curiosity, then I'm slipping back into the comfort zone. And I think, which is fine. As I said when I last spoke to you, it's a warm, snuggly place, the comfort
Mm-hmm.
zone. Don't get me wrong; it's very enticing. But I'm almost certain that if I get to the end of my life and I've just remained in that comfort zone, I will have done myself a terrible disservice.
Now, the thought that came to my mind, and this might sound like a strange question for you, but we're talking about your legacy, right? Like, the legacy is one of the things that drives you the most. It sounds like there are two things that really drive you, right? There's what are you going to be when you're looking back on your life and you actually can't be doing anything anymore, right? You're the Tony Robbins says is rocking chair test, right? You're sitting on your rocking chair in the front porch
Yeah.
and you're watching the world go by, and but there's or like you're just on your deathbed and you're looking back over your life. But there's this other element of how other people have been impacted or influenced as a result of the actions that you've taken in your life. And it sounds like you try and balance both of those two as driving this definition of legacy.
Yeah, look, I think so. I just, as I said, um, I see a lot of lethargy in people my age. I see a lot of people, living vicariously through the energy of others,
Hmm.
and I think they're better than that. And if I can be in any small little way some kind of inspiration, um, as a middle-aged person, then then that's what I can give back. But I'm not gonna do that by doing nothing.
Yes. Okay. Cool. So now I've got the a clearer sense of how you're defining success. It's this idea of being adventurous, brave, courageous, to do the things that are uncomfortable, or not, sorry, to not just do the things that are comfortable. So to get outside of that comfort zone
Do you know
and
what,
to be able to,
Harry?
yeah,
I'm sorry to interrupt. I don't need to say, but every time you do something that is outside of your comfort zone, you learn a little bit more about yourself. And
okay.
I know
Is that what,
that probably sounds like a cliche. We never stop learning. The learning curve of life never stops, uh, and it probably is a cliche, but I think your capacity or your ability or potential to keep learning slows down if you stay in the comfort zone. That's my point.
hmm
You learn more about yourself. I mean, that Summit TV show I was on, um, resilience is a really important attribute in this world, and
mm,
I don't know that people are very well versed at resilience. It's so hostile out there, and it's not something you can just develop overnight.
hmm
Um, it just isn't. Um, so the more you put yourself into scenarios that just don't, I mean, even right now, talking to you about all of this, this is not conversation I have with people ever, really. This is just my
hmm
own internal conversation that I'm now espousing to you. But um, yeah, resilience is critical to getting through this this world. I know
and
I'm introducing other themes, but self development for sure is an education, and that there are things you can do to accelerate that education. That's all I'm
hmm
really saying.
and to loop that back, I've always loved the saying that whatever doesn't grow dies. If you're not growing, you're dying. And
Yeah,
that
and
comes
that
right back to exactly what you're saying.
the one from the corporate world, which I remember as standing still is the quickest way of going backwards,
Mm, there you go.
which is similar, I guess.
Yeah.
And the standing still is the comfort zone bit that I was talking about.
Okay. So the way that you know that you're successful, like the way that if you're defining success as constantly growing, moving forward, improving yourself, finding ways to improve yourself, to challenge yourself, to get out of that nice, warm, snuggly comfort zone,
Yes.
and to then ultimately inspire others, uh, probably after you die. Or maybe during the
Well,
time as
hopefully
well.
during it, hopefully during
Hopefully
my
during.
life.
Hopefully,
you
hopefully.
know,
Well,
I mean, I have friends that say, God, you do all this and do all that. And to me, it's just my normal life, but I don't quite know what they're
mhm,
talking about. But,
yeah.
and I have friends, one in particular, who continually inspires me because he's ahead of me on the learning curve. And it's quite
Hmm.
inspirational to see him, and what
Yes.
he does and what he's turned his back on, which is the status quo of the societal expectation of a of a
Hmm.
of a middle-aged man, and father of five actually.
Yeah.
He's just doing what makes him happy,
Hmm.
and I'm sure lots of his Cambridge alumni would see him as a bit of a loser. Um, but just because he doesn't have the material wealth, but at the same time they're also in awe of how he's living his life. He just goes from one
Yes.
adventure to the next.
Hmm. Okay. So how do you know that you've been successful? How do you know that you've been meeting this definition of success?
I'll tell you how I know, because um, I'm constantly poking myself. When I start to feel bored,
Hmm.
when I start to feel like I've fallen into a rhythm in life that isn't really changing, which does happen. I'm not talking this up like I'm this dude who's just so successfully doing what he makes him happy. I'm not. I have to still poke myself. Um, and if I feel bored, I genuinely feel like I'm slowly dying.
Mm.
Um, so that is a really useful barometer for me of how successful I'm being in that moment or in that period of time. And then I think, well, what am I going to do about it? Because there are things that I would love to do, but they're a little bit, and I've still got some there, like the washing up in the sink.
Hmm.
You kind of go, you need to wash it up, but you think, oh, I'll do it later. I'll do it
Hmm.
tomorrow. Um, and you only end up washing it up when you need the plate. Which is not, which is not a great reason
You
to
mean
do. Anyway,
just before, or just in my case, just before your spouse gets home. That's the way.
yeah, exactly. Like flossing your teeth before the day before, the morning of going to the dentist. So
So
I
so
guess
there's
that's
this feeling of boredom, right? Like
if I feel bored, if I don't feel like there's something on the horizon that I have in place, one to look forward to, because that gives you something to work towards.
Mhm.
One of my tools, which I'm sure you're going to ask me, one of my tools is to always have something on the horizon, something that is something to work towards, to look forward to work for, to earn money
Mhm.
for. Um, without having something on the horizon, I slump into a rhythm of boredom.
Right. Like there are runners out there who only end up running when they've got a race that's coming up. It's the only time they're going to run. Suddenly, if they've done a whole bunch of races, they've been running consistently for 5 years, and they've got no race up on the horizon,
If
then a
there's no
month
race,
in,
yeah, then
they
what are
just
they
stop.
training for? What are they
Yeah.
training for? What are they keeping themselves mentally alert for? And that's when the comfort zone, the danger. Because God, it feels good when you don't train. I mean, I'm nowhere near an
Mm.
athlete, but I know when you train, you feel good afterwards. But when you stop training, it's like, oh, this is kind of nice too. You know,
Yeah, I like what you're sharing. Ultimately, I talk with my 4-year-old about feeling bored quite a bit, or any time that we start to talk about boredom, we reframe it. She now doesn't tell me that she's bored. She says, "Daddy, I'm finding it really hard to find inspiration right now."
she says that to you at 4 years old.
Yeah, she says that to me
That's
now.
amazing.
I just changed the language around being bored as lacking inspiration. And then we can just straight away go into the conversation of what does it look like to have inspiration? How can we find some inspiration? What are the things? And she'll always go to things that she's finding difficult as opposed to the things that she's done before. And then she's just training herself to do that, which is cool.
Yeah. Well,
And
that's
there are
that's
times where she'll
wonderful.
just end up just staring at herself in the mirror for 10 minutes straight, doing it for I don't know how she can be entertained by that, but for some reason she can.
But how
She's 4 year
wonderful
old.
that you hear her.
Mm.
Because a lot of parents would say, "Oh, sweetie, see what's on TV," or, play your game, on your iPad.
Hmm.
That's so. Good on you. Kudos to you for making that a conversation that she can comfortably have.
Mm. Let's let's dive into your journey, and I think that then the listeners will be able to understand more about where that definition of success that you have, or ultimately what you've kind of given me is the definition of non-success, right? The definition of failure. is
Well,
ultimately what you've given me, and then
my
you pursued the opposite.
personal, yeah, my personal failure is letting myself down,
Hmm.
ultimately, and choosing not to be brave.
Hmm.
That's failure for me. If there's some money in there somewhere, then terrific, because that pays for holidays, and I've just had, just been away for 3 weeks with my two sons, which felt like the last sort of hurrah really before their lives take off, and they're at that point that I mentioned I was at when I was 20, going out into the
Hmm.
world and wanting to, and that's when dad becomes a bit of a nuisance rather than someone they really want to travel with. But that takes money, so um, just being pleased with my progress as a person doesn't allow for a holiday like that.
No.
So
Let's dive
yeah,
in. Let's start with your journey. Maybe without this becoming a therapy session, what was your childhood and what were your parents like, especially your dad?
wow, okay,
Yeah,
geez.
no, like is it just because I know that your dad,
It,
you've mentioned fatherhood a whole bunch of times and who
right,
you are to
okay.
your kid, to your boys, and
Well,
you've in the
it
past
sounds like
you've
this.
spoken
Sounds
about
like
your
the
dad
start
as
of a
well.
therapy session to me, Harry. So,
Don't worry, I won't be asking why
do I
too
need
many
to lie
times.
down for the answer here?
Take
Um,
take a nice comfortable position, close your eyes.
okay. Well, look, I grew up in London in the 70s, and my father was an actor,
Hmm.
um, and subsequently over time became quite a well-known actor in the UK. And here, actually, to some extent. But we can talk about that in a minute. Mother was a choreographer and director. They met at Yale Drama School in America, and he was always English, and there were bigger acting opportunities in England than there were in America at the time. He didn't want to see himself on a soap opera,
Hmm.
Bold and the Beautiful or Falcon's Crest or whatever was going on at that time. So gosh, I have to cut this really summarize this. So yeah, look, grew up with fairly liberal parents. Well, very liberal actually. I was pretty much free to experiment and do whatever I liked to some extent. So, for example, I had, excuse me, piano lessons, but when I wanted to stop, I was just said I don't want to do them anymore, and it was fine. I'm a little bit
Hmm.
annoyed about that, to be honest. I wish there'd been a little bit more. I've subsequent, as a consequence, become someone that's kind of quite good at everything, but not an expert at anything,
Hmm.
which I do blame my parenting of me for. But anyway, when I was 12, I was in a West End play with my father in Waiting for Godot, Samuel Beckett show. I don't know if you know that. I
No, I
was the
don't.
shepherd boy that runs on at the end of each scene, and it was quite kind of a pivotal production in the history books of that show, and I supposedly, actually, the first time I ran on, I actually peed in my pants slightly. There's a little
Okay.
cue light that goes red, which means get ready, and then green means run on. And when it went red, I can remember hearing the little stream of urine in my pants. Um, and the actor Max Wall, who's an old school comedian who was in Jabberwocky. Do you know the movie Jabberwocky?
No,
No.
I
Anyway,
don't.
um, he forgot all of his lines, and he was asking me questions that weren't in the play. Anyway, I came running off in tears and said, I don't want to do this again. Anyway, I did it for 13 weeks. Um, Found out in subsequent years that I was offered work from the Royal Shakespeare Company and some TV ads, and my parents decided to keep it from me
Mm.
because my schooling was more important. And my dad was a jobbing actor at that point. He was driving a minicab and the odd acting gig. He didn't wish that on his son, that life.
Mm.
Um, anyway, they divorced. I became the man of the house. Um, Gosh, childhood.
Well,
it
where
was.
did it go? Where did it go from there? Like, I mean, like they divorced.
Well,
You stayed with your mum, did you?
I was at the wrong school. It was a city school in London that was really designed to farm out accountants and lawyers and surgeons, and
Right.
it wasn't me.
How did your parents send you there? Like your parents both very liberal, very creative, and
I don't
then
really know. I got a small scholarship offer to go there. Um, the headmaster apparently told my parents that normally that would be for academic prowess or
hmm
success, and it wasn't. That wasn't the case with me. He just wanted me in the school, and I think a couple of my friends from primary school were going, so it was enough of the ones that you go there and then you never
mm,
see them, because you
yeah,
make
right.
new friends. So it was kind of an easy for me to do that, and I spun them out when with my last studies in I don't know what you call it in Australia, but the 17 and 18 years old, the last
hmm
sort of the last push. Um, they really wanted you to either be an artist or do the arts or the sciences, one or the other.
Right.
And I was like, no, I'm not prepared to do that. I'm too interested. I'm creative at heart, but I'm not ready to say goodbye to science. I'm too interested in it. So I ended
hmm
up doing um, half science and half arts, which they were totally spun out by.
hmm
Didn't do particularly well, and then went to university to study physiology and biochemistry and zoology and psychology, which after a year of doing that, I realized I was completely out of my depth. I always knew I'd fall back on the creative,
mm
um, and got a job as a junior graphic designer for a film company working on film posters, like When Harry Met Sally and
mm
Wild at Heart, and so I was suddenly became a graphic designer. I left university, and then the next thing you know, I'm sort of married, and life takes a whole other turn again. A lot of things get put on hold. You're a young dad, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's not about you anymore at all. It
No.
just isn't. So many things or plans and dreams or whatever just get put on the back burner, and but willingly so. You wouldn't have it any other way, as a parent. So yeah, I ended up. Sorry, I've sort of jumped a bit. I was retrenched from that first job when
hmm
Apple Macs hit the scene, and I didn't have a clue what that was. And somebody that covered for me on it while I was away did, and they got my job. So I ended up doing a master's degree in graphic design, which in itself was a bit controversial because I skipped the foundation, I skipped the Bachelor of Arts degree and did the
hmm
master's. And again, the explanation was the head of the course wanted me on the course. And that was the hardest I think I have ever worked, because I realized at that point that if I didn't knuckle, because I was quite lazy, inherently lazy, which unfortunately I think that freedom to choose and the lack of strictness and focus from my upbringing just kind of let me cruise, and I get by. I was one of those sort of B minus C grade students. It was enough, you know.
hmm
Um, um, and I realized with the master's degree, if I failed it, then I was going to be lost in this big world that I'd sprung in myself into. Um, so that's the first time I've actually really worked my ass off. Um, and I got it, and I got a job and met a lady, and 6 years later came to Australia. So that was in 1998 that
With
I
kids or
left. So
without kids at that
I was
stage?
28 without children, not
hmm
married, but Australian girlfriend who I met in London. Um, um, Fell in love, the story, followed my heart, and went and lived in Sydney for 15 years, where we
And
then had a family.
yeah, okay. And what were you doing in Australia? Just still the graphics, the creatives, the
Graphic
artist
design,
side?
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
found a practice in Surrey Hills,
Hmm.
worked there for 6 years, became an equity partner there. Um, and you know what? And this is all part of what I started off talking to you about. I actually run a design practice now, and I probably shouldn't out myself, which I'm probably about to. I'm a good designer, but I'm not amazing. You know, it's never really felt like my calling,
Mm.
but I've made a career out of it, and and a reasonably good one. I've been in business for myself um, since 2004. And I don't know what the stats are, but it's if I think if you last longer than 5 years, you're doing pretty well.
I think
Um,
95% fail in the first five
is that
years.
what it
I
is?
think I
Yeah.
think that's the number,
So
depending on industry.
I've stuck it, I've stuck it out, and but I've sort of mixed it up with things which I suppose satisfy my soul more. So I guess, and I'll go through the whole marriage thing in a minute because you alluded to that story earlier. But I've, in fact, together with my ex-wife, I produced a show at the Opera House in Sydney. I just woke up one morning and thought, you know what, you know, I want to put a show on at the Opera House, and cutting a long story short, I did. It was a sort of a cabaret style, immersive show around beer, actually, which my ex-wife actually starred in. So it was partly to help accelerate and catapult her career,
Hmm.
uh, which she sort of rapidly became essentially the Jamie Oliver of the craft beer world here
Oh
in
wow.
Australia, and still is. In fact, tonight she's presenting the International Beer Awards, which she does every year. So, shows like that. Um, I won't go in other little things. It just realised that that's really my sweet spot, but it's not sustainable because it doesn't really pay the bills.
No.
But I knew that deep down that was the real Josh, um,
Mm.
working to my strengths and being the happiest. Um, but as I said, life took over, children took over, and all of that sort of kind of stopped. Um, and then we were happily married or together for 23 years.
Mm.
Shall I get into this story now quickly?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Um,
So yeah, and you're happily married. What does that look like? What did it look like from the outside before it all came tumbling down?
look, look, a happy marriage to me is just one where there's mutual respect. You know, there's a mutual love for each other. There's a joy with what we produce together, which is the children. There's no resentment, and there's happiness and spontaneous fun. I mean, I don't know if it gets much better than that in terms of the
Hmm.
definition of a happy relationship. I'm sure you're more versed in other traits, but that to me seemed to fit the bill, and we just tumbled along and raised these children, and we moved from Sydney to Melbourne, um, having been there for 15 years. Um, and I didn't realize at the time part of the move was actually something in her that needed a change. A little
Right.
bit like when couples want dogs. They want to have a dog, but what they really want is a child, but they haven't quite worked that out yet. Um,
Ah.
that whole thing with we're thinking of
Yeah.
getting a dog, and it's like, oh yeah,
Practice before the kids get
you
feathered.
really want children.
Mhm.
Anyway, I'm paraphrasing this somewhat because I thought we were in a reasonably good place, and then we sort of just went through a period of being in a rut, which I think is pretty common.
Yes.
um, but you don't think for a second that you can't figure that out. You can't work through it. You don't think for a second. To me, it was just surface shit, a bit of surface shit that we can wipe off, as long as we're
Mm-hmm.
conscious that it's there and we don't deny that there's a surface layer of shit, we can clean it. We
Mm-hmm.
can clean it together and everything. But I didn't realize over however many years that she was, I think, initially subconsciously, but then consciously processing how happy she actually was. And I don't know if it's a female trait or not, but she internalized her emotions, and I was not privy to them. And she ultimately announced that she'd had enough and that she was going to leave. And it was like, it was such an enormous shock. How we've all got friends that who separate, and you kind of go, oh well, it was never quite right, was it? It was, it doesn't really surprise me. That we were so not that couple. Everybody was flawed. It was like you were the last couple we thought that would happen to. And yeah, the writing had not been on the wall. I said to her, I said, why didn't you tell me? I did tell you. You just weren't listening. And I hear that a lot from friends that are going through the same thing. They're accused of not having listened. And maybe that's a male trait. Maybe we don't really listen, or we choose not to. It's la 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 la. But I said, well, you should have been louder. And she eventually said, yes, maybe I should have been louder.
Mm-hmm.
So cutting a long story short, there was, as often there is, there was another person involved, which sort of made it even harder to bear. And I went into the worst, darkest hole I can imagine, really. A place so dark I didn't even know who I was. And as I spoke at the Fathering Project, I became somebody that not only did I not recognize, but somebody who I didn't feel could parent even. I was so absorbed in my own misery and woe is me and my crushed heart. I couldn't even consider anybody else, even my children, which made me feel ashamed, as well, ashamed. And I dated like a man possessed. That was my Nurofen, really, to sort of get through it and not to be alone, and looking for affirmation that I was still attractive and, sexy. And but it was like a mental illness, Harry, really. It was just the worst place imaginable. Things I won't even talk about, but anyway. However, and there is light at the end of the tunnel. People told me that it takes time. Time heals everything. And honestly, at the time, I just told them, shut the fuck up. It's just bullshit. It's not true. My life's over. I've got nothing to live for, blah, blah, blah. But you know what? They were absolutely right. Within, well, probably two years, I just started to emerge from the clouds of it all and get a better view of the landscape, I suppose. And I started to realize that my ego had a lot to play with my pain. It wasn't just my crushed heart; it was my ego. And I also started to realize that my ex-wife had not made a decision lightly. She had clearly gone through a lot of stress herself to reach that decision, a very brave decision, which I concluded, and that she deserved to be happy. I loved her. I want her to be happy, and if it's not with me, then shit, but you deserve to be happy. And I started to accept what had happened, and I started to realize that actually she had probably done me a massive favor. She'd been braver than I think I ever could have been. Because when I started, and this sort of comes back to how I started this conversation, when I started to think, well, hang on a minute, I've been so focused on what do I need to do to make her happy, to get her back, what do I need to do? What can I fix? What can I fix?
Mm-hmm.
That I actually never considered in that 2 year period. I never once considered, hang on, what do I need to be happy?
Mm.
What am I happy in this? Was I happy in the latter part of this marriage? And you know what? When I allowed myself the space to ask myself that question, I actually concluded that I was happily unhappy.
Mm.
And just two simple words, I was happily unhappy. And the more you say that over and over, the more unacceptable that starts to sound. And you start to realize, well, that's absurd. I don't want to be happily unhappy. So
So
I
what is that?
actually,
What is that? That's just like accepting, like
well, that's the
having
comfort zone.
having your standards too low. Is that all it
It's
is?
it's the comfort zone of, well, you know what, I don't need to worry. The people have got it a lot worse than me. I'll just settle and just roll with it all and just accept my fate and don't complain and don't whinge. But I knew that and part of that happily unhappy was I was not expressing myself. I was not
Mm.
getting my creative person out. I wasn't exercising that person. So I was burying myself, the true Josh. And I actually fell out of love with myself, I realized as well.
Mm.
And I don't think you can make progress unless you love yourself. I know that's probably a whole nother podcast, but
I've only got a few questions about that.
uh, um, so learning to love yourself again and realizing the things that that you were compromising um, were actually a very big compromise indeed. Um, was a massive realization.
Now, how did you get to that point of being happily unhappy, of having your standards so low and kind of just ending up being
Well,
comfortable
I
from
talked
what
about
was a great
rhythm.
start, right?
I talked about rhythms in life earlier. It
Mm-hmm.
was, and the importance of changing them, keeping the
Yes.
rhythm change. You have to change it. If you stay in the same rhythm, it can only stagnate. At some stage, it can only stagnate. And all I can say is, I think in relationships, that's a very common thing that can happen. Everybody stays in the same rhythm. Everybody has their little routines. They stop communicating, talking to each other, or having fun the way they used to. And you put it down to, well, and that's okay. That's what happens when you get older, and it happens when your kids get older. And but again, that's a trap. That's the comfort zone. Um, so that's how I got there, because it was, when I look at 23 years, I remember speaking to a neighbor, a big Greek guy, a big fat Greek guy, and I was all kind of woe is me, and I've lost her forever. And he said, mate, he said, how long were you together? And I said, 23 years. He just put his hand out. He said, well fucking done, mate. That's a pretty good bloody stint. Not many people can claim to have been together for that long. Well done, mate. He said, you're a good looking rooster. Get back out there. And I just thought, God, you know what? He's got a point. It's not that the marriage failed. It's just that it ran out of puff.
Mm.
The kids didn't really need us anymore to keep them alive. They were always going to be loved by us. So then I think people start thinking, well, how happy am I? And I think that's what my ex-wife did in advance of me. And the situation that I was thrust into forced me to have that conversation with myself. But it took 2 years, because for two
Mm.
years, what I'm talking to you about now was Swahili. It was the pain. I mean, like needing to burst pain. There's
Mm.
no room for philosophizing and rational thought. There just isn't. Um, and that's something which I feel very strongly in terms of, anybody that might be listening to this, that that's a truth. There are 2 years, because I felt so lost and so abandoned and so alone. There was nobody I could talk to, and if I had heard me talking now, it would have given me quite a lot of comfort, actually.
Mm.
That this is, it's almost a script that is, we're not special, really, any of us. Um, in fact, I read something somewhere that said, by month 3, you will do and you will say this. And I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what I did and exactly what I said. I'm following a heartbroken, typical male script here. I'm not
Mm.
special. Um, so anyway, that was a huge journey for me because it ultimately forced me into action, and the actions that I've subsequently have taken have allowed me to find myself again, to find the love that I had for myself again. And as I said when we last spoke, to have a renaissance of sorts, because I've tapped back into what makes me truly myself, what makes me truly the happiest. Um, and all of this talk about comfort zone and, you know, needing to push for adventure is because I know that that's what feeds it. So if I know what feeds it, why would I cut off that supply? I need to keep that supply coming for the rest of my
Mm.
life.
Yes. Look, before we transition to what's happened since you got out of that, I was going to call it a rut, but it's probably more like a dark, deep hole.
Oh, it's
Before
hellhole.
we
Hellhole,
hellhole,
yeah.
before you got out that, like before we like transition to this next part of the journey, I'm sure that there'll be a lot of guys who are listening to this who would be seeing their marriage in kind of like that rut. And like I've spoken to a lot of people who would resonate with that kind of idea. And they're probably thinking to themselves, similar to what you are. It's like, no, 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 we'll just get through it. It's tough with the young
Of
kids
course,
and they're
we'll get
doing the
through it.
business and
It's
it's all
normal
good.
relationship stuff.
What do you wish that you had heard and then taken action on? Like you said that it would have been really helpful for you when you were in the hellhole. The that to have heard you talking now about that experience.
Well,
What
there's
do you
two
wish that
different,
you would have
yeah,
heard like 5 years before that?
5 years before being in the hellhole.
Yeah. Yeah,
Ah,
bingo.
because there's two sets of advice. One, once you're in the hole, because sometimes you have no choice. That's where you're going to end up.
Hmm.
That because that's my wife had full control over what happened. So she put me in the hole whether I liked it or not. Right. So then
Hmm.
there's a whole set of advice for once you're in the hole.
Yeah,
That's
I'm
not what
talking
you're
about
asking
like
me.
how do,
So
how do we
so
avoid that hole
beforehand,
coming?
well,
Yeah.
look, sometimes I don't think it can be avoided. I don't personally think that you know that that relationships can necessarily last. I mean, 23 years is a long time. You know, how many people whose nana and poppers are still together after 60 years, but they bicker? The bickering.
Mm.
It's because it's very unusual. Occasionally, you see people who are still head over heels in love with each other. You know, in their 70s and 80s, and it's just gorgeous. But maybe I've become a bit, cynical because of what I've been through, but sometimes it can't be avoided. Um, what I would say, though, is for the times that it can be avoided, is if you don't talk about how you feel with each other, then you're doomed. If
Right.
you can't be open and say, how do you feel? Or how does this make you feel? Tell me, and rather than just, yeah, no, good, good, good. Yeah, no, I'm all right. It's not enough. You know, you need to be able to open up to each other and ask each other. You have to nurture each other, and we stopped nurturing each other because we just we got complacent. I assumed that we were together forever. That was a mistake, so I stopped working at it. I got lazy, you know. So for those people that are thinking, "Oh, geez, how do I turn this around? This is all going a bit south." It's just hold your partner's hand and just look them in the eye and tell me how you feel.
Mm.
Accept that you're in a rut, and I reckon um, it would be quite a revelation to have a partner go and realize you're both feeling the same way, and it's like, oh, good. And it was too late for me. I was very grateful. I said, I feel like you've turned the light on for me. My head has been buried in the sand. I can now see our future together. It's oh so glorious. I can see it, but it was too late. She was
Mm.
protecting me, but she'd moved on already. I'd left it too late. But as I said, I think she did me a big favor, because that continuing compromise for the next 30 years, and I would have, again, the visual image I have is of me becoming an empty husk of a man,
Mm.
and there being a little puff of wind one day, and then it's like, there goes Josh. Oh well, what's for dinner? You know what I mean? I didn't.
Yeah.
That's really where my life was. I felt like, and I'm probably being very melodramatic. Um,
If
anyway,
you
but
if
yeah,
you held the if you held the I'm just this is what fascinates me every time I explore this concept of relationships breaking down, right? Because the relationship starts completely different to how it is when it ends. And a lot of the time I hear this one of the spouses or ex-spouses going, "Oh, they've just always been that way." It's like, well, then why the hell do you get married in the first place? I've got a I've got an itch to scratch with just with this part of the conversation. Like imagine if you held your marriage as the thing that you want to make sure lasts forever, and not just that it lasts, but that it actually thrives, and that you both thrive within the relationship as well. And that 23 years, yeah, it's a long time, it's good, it's better than most, but it's like the quality of the 23 years which makes it continue to go for longer. And I'm curious about that, because marriage used to be
well,
different.
I know exactly what it is, because I thought about, I was kind of in awe of the fact that we'd been together for that long. I'd
Mm,
lie in bed and go and look at her and I go, oh my God, who are you? I can't believe you're my wife. Who are you?
mhm,
Why are you in my bed?
mhm.
Which we shared for 23 years. Because when we
Did you
met,
think? Did
we
you think
were,
that? Do you think that or share that?
no,
You think?
I would share it. Yeah,
Yeah.
no, I would
Okay.
share it, because it was just like, where did you come from? It's like you look at
Mm,
your kids and you go, who the hell are you? Why are you calling me dad? This is
mhm,
weird. Um, but I know exactly what it is. It's when we met. I think we were 22 or 24 when we met. 24 when we met. We
mhm,
were children, you know, um, and we ran naively and innocently, hand in hand, through the daisy field of life. Um, and we did all the stuff you're supposed to. We acquired debt. We had children. Required some more debt. Um, but what we were doing is we were constantly growing up. We were constantly maturing as people. We were constantly becoming new and different versions of each other.
mhm.
And as a consequence, there was constant interest in each other, because we were never really with the same person for very long, if that makes sense.
Yes, makes
Because
sense.
I've thought about this a little bit. Um, However, you get to, as I said, you get to that point, and you see this, with couples that separate when their kids get to about 11 or 12. It seems to be like, the equivalent of the witching hour for marriages, where you've kind of now matured into the people that you are, and are
Mm,
likely to be for longer than for a longer, more sustained period of time than went from 20 to 30, 30 to 40, 40 to 50. Now you're in your, we were late 40s, I suppose. It's 7 years ago. Um, you've settled down, and when I talk about that comfort zone and that rhythm, you kind of settle into it,
mhm.
and you stop the spontaneity, and you take for granted what you've got. And that's where we and I say we because it's a two-way street. Um, I know I certainly didn't give it the time, um, or the respect, um, to keep it alive. I probably could have done, but I didn't, and that's just the way it is. I mean, as it turned out, as I said, it worked out well.
Mm.
Um, but who knows? Maybe we would still be together, if we had a different attitude on life, if we had continued to be spontaneous and fun. But I'm just not sure that that's easy to do. And as I said, when the
Mm.
kids get to that age, I think couples look at each other and go, oh, when they leave in 6 years, I'm just going to be left with you, and
Mm.
is that what I want? And then, of course, if somebody else is in the picture who's got a new energy and is flattering, and it's
Hmm.
flattering to be, to feel flattered, then it's easy for a new energy to become more interesting, more intoxicating, if you like. The grass is
Mm.
always greener, I know, but it's I don't know that I would have done anything different, because what I did felt like I was doing the right thing at the time. So it's easy to
Hmm.
say you just do it differently. Um, but I know that, and it's just such a cliche, but you stop communicating, and what happens is you start living like this.
Hmm.
But first of all, then you're like this, and then you start living parallel lives, and then they do that. Um, and it's the when you're living parallel lives, is if you can recognize that and do something about it, then I think that's the point at which, you may be able to resurrect or inject a new energy and passion into the relationship.
You shared some really intriguing things in that. You shared there's the element of what you're doing for yourself and making sure that you keep growing, because you got to continue to grow and stop maturing, stop settling down. And then there's or keep be what, like a an aged wine, which right, like, which becomes nicer with age. Um,
Yeah, until it
the
until it sours.
No, it's just it never sours. It sours when you die.
Yeah,
No, but like there's that element to it of like just keep growing. Don't just settle. Don't keep doing the same rhythm. There's another element of trying to make sure that there's spontaneity and that you maintain the connection, and that you maintain the closeness and the connection. Part of that is communication. And then there's this other element of making sure that you're also supporting your spouse to grow. Is that what I heard from you as well? Like making sure that you're both growing and you're both
yeah,
becoming more
which is
interesting
which
to
we
each
did
other.
we did by default, so we didn't have to think
Mm.
about it. It
Mm.
happened anyway. So then when that stops, you actually have to recognize that it stopped, and swap it out with conscious effort. And I
Mm.
think the conscious effort is the thing that couples often fail at. That's it.
Mm.
I mean, it's really
Because
simple.
because it what because it's so comfortable, right?
Yeah. And I was arrogant enough to to think that, well, maybe it's not great at the moment, but she's not going to leave me. I mean, I
Mm.
literally thought, we've got our financials and this and that. It would be way too big a headache for her to. You're not going to leave. And that was
Mm.
really arrogant. So that was a misjudgment, and which is why it
Okay,
was such
so
a shock.
so everything in your life was kind of from like kind of up to that point was you were growing, you were finding out who you are and who you're meant to be and becoming the mature Josh until that point. And arrogance kind of got to the point of like you got to the point of arrogance through settling down and just going, everything's fine, it's okay, I've got enough relationship savings in the bank,
Yeah,
I've
and
put in enough
we're not
effort.
going anywhere. We're always going to be like this, and
Okay.
maybe better versions here and worse versions there, but we're never gonna part.
Sure.
Um, and we did, and as I said, because she wasn't happy, and that's
Hmm.
something which ultimately I had to respect, because
Yes.
I wanted her to, and I stood to this day. I still do. We're actually very good friends. She said she's
Hmm.
recently wrote a letter for me to read to my aging mother, and she just said she's very proud of the relationship that we have. The whole divorce was managed through kindness and graciousness, ultimately,
Hmm.
um, and that, in terms of life interactions, I think was a question you asked. That's to me is a key to interacting in life with people, is to be kind, always be kind, and thoughtful, gracious, and sensitive. Um, and to the point where our peers and friends were actually almost disappointed that the divorce went so smoothly.
They
Where's the
wanted the drama,
drama?
right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
where's the actor?
where's the
Where's the
drama?
yeah? Um, but at the same time, we've also had a lot of people say, "Wow, you really have set the bar for how to do this." You should be very proud of yourselves, and because you see so much anger.
Mm,
I've got friends that I can almost no longer really be friends with because they won't let go of the anger. It's so
mm,
much anger that they actually don't trust. He was in a heterosexual relationship, but so much anger he doesn't trust women at all
mm,
anymore. And it's like, dude, I've taken him through. It's not gonna help anybody. It's not going to achieve anything, and it's going to give you cancer. I mean, it's as simple as that.
mm,
Um, Living with that kind of anger. So it's when you start changing the rhetoric of people talk about family being torn apart,
mhm,
ripped apart, and it's like, really, has it been ripped apart? Because that's not
mm,
very helpful rhetoric, really. What has actually happened? The kids are still there. Your wife or your ex-wife or ex-partner is still there. So what's happened? It's just changed.
mm.
It's metamorphosed into something else. But it's not. The love with the kids is still there. Kids are resilient. Kids adapt. Um, so, but people still like to say ripped apart. It's like when I moved from England to Australia. You've uprooted and you've moved to the other side of the planet. And it's like, well, yeah, you could look at it like that, or you could say, I'm a day away
Mhm.
on an
Yes.
aeroplane. I'm a day away. Um, so, again, I think in relationships, there's a lot of rhetoric which is really not very helpful, not very useful at all. And we managed, to keep it kind, which was amazing. And the kids didn't, there was no, they just cruised through the whole process. They probably wouldn't have even known when the divorce came through.
Right. Except you shared just now that you were struggling to even have space to parent. Your
Oh,
kids would have
that was
recognized
during
something.
my hell. That was my hellhole. Remember, I said there's a whole
Hmm.
nother set of advice for once you're in the hellhole.
Right. Yes.
You know, everything I've been saying to you, kindness, graciousness, it's just like it means
That's
nothing when you're
before and that's after, but not
when
in the
you're in that
hellhole.
hole. That none of that. It's just shit. It doesn't mean a thing. Um, and it's really important to recognize that if you're in that hole, that there is at some point a way out of it. Um, you're not there forever. Because honestly, I thought that was. I mean, I honestly felt like I had there was no I had nothing to live for.
Mm.
It was so selfish and so self-absorbed. That's how low it was. I was deeply in deep depression, which I didn't think I did depression. I'm normally a happy-go-lucky, quirky, funny guy.
Hmm.
Just sort of the joy de vivre. But I was depressed and I couldn't sleep because I was overthinking everything, processing, worrying. Having to take sleeping pills because I'd wake up at 2 and then I'd be writing letters and I'd be thinking about what I should have done. I mean, it was just awful. And then, yeah, and then the dating, as I said, over 90 dates and 10 short-term girlfriends in a year and a half. I mean, it was nuts. A couple of dates a day. Um, you know, the, and I was just trying to numb the pain. So
I
no,
think
not
just
nothing to do with being in the hole. The hole's a whole nother category of
hmm.
conversation.
I think I want to add something to this, just for the listeners who've stuck with us this long. I
How
just
long
want
have we
to
been
add that
talking? Oh, Jesus.
an hour and 8 minutes. The I've found like through all the clients I've coached, and then even all the clients I've helped with finances over the years, and all the clients I've taught meditation to, and all like basically all the friends I've helped out and people I've supported, I've found that most of our pain and most of our frustration tends to come from a something along the lines of the belief that it's always going to be like this. It's never going to change.
Yeah,
And when you
100%.
because when you believe that, then it's like, well, there's no way out. Like this, it's just going to be like this forever. Of course, I should be this, this miserable because my life is going to be like this forever. And they forget how things can adapt and how adaptable we are as human beings when we want to be. Um, what do you
Totally.
think about that?
Well, look, 100%. And that's why I think the more people can talk about that place, because it's not, that's not exclusive to my experience. I've heard this quite a lot. People came up to me after that fathering project saying, "Oh my God, my brother-in-law is or my ex-brother-in-law is going through exactly this, and he just keeps calling, and we don't know what to say." When I told you I was talking to bank tellers and bus conductors, anyone that would listen, I mean, I was out of control,
Hmm.
processing, um, and I felt like I was dying because I couldn't make it go away, and it started off by being having the rug pulled from under my feet. The life I thought that I was going to have was taken from me, it felt. And I
Hmm.
had no say in it, no control, which is feeds back into what I said about my ego, which took 2 years to recognize that the ego actually had a lot to play in all of that. But no, for sure, it feels like it's that. And to be honest, speaking to counselors, which I did, it just felt like they were trying to massage baby oil on me. I don't know. I don't even know where that image came from. But, it was just surface like, I see, okay, yes, that would be hard. It just made it worse. And I think
And then
I took a
let's
bit,
just keep repeating the same limiting
yeah,
story
I
again
took a
and
bit
again
of a
and again and
stab at
again.
that. Who was the guy from Movember? That spoke very well. When I said
Hmm.
that I don't think counsellors really understand that the male psyche in that scenario, which is so common, that they really need some tools to help.
Yeah.
And he actually said that they've recognised exactly that, and they're actually trying to put sort of toolkits together to aid counsellors to be more useful
Yeah,
because it was
you spoke to two you were speaking to two exceptional psychologists who
yeah,
focus
there you go.
on
So
men
it
especially.
was
So yeah.
wonderful to hear them say, yeah, it's a problem.
Mm.
It's a problem. So yeah, it's very self-destructive, that place. I was happy to take drugs and drink and and oh, I honestly gone.
What happened after? Where did the adventure go to? Like where did the adventure
Well,
post all of
when I
that
when
start?
I popped out of it, and I think remember the movie Carrie, where just she's buried, but she's got a finger still on the surface of the earth, and I
Right.
still had a finger. I was completely buried, but I still had a little finger, and I was just able to pull myself out of the dirt and forgive myself, love myself, forgive my ex-partner, love my children again. I just started to reconnect with them. I think I did that through adventure. I took them both to Nepal. We went trekking, the three of us, and then I subsequently took my eldest, who at the time was 13, took him to climb Kilimanjaro because he loved the trekking so much, and he was the second youngest Australian to have ever climbed it. So it was a huge life-shaping moment for
Mm.
him. Um, and we shared tears and failures and joy and together, which just brought us together again, reminded them that I'm there for them, that I love them, and will always support them,
Mm.
and open their eyes to the world and the adventures that they too can have, or at least that spirit of adventure to foster that in them. So I did that. I eventually found a girlfriend that didn't think that I was still in love with my ex-wife, which I think previously was just, I just had a beacon, obviously, that just sent this signal. Even when I thought I was really trying really hard to disguise it, they would all say, "You're not ready. You're not ready. You're still in love with your ex." It's like, "Oh God, you got me again." But I eventually came out of that, and I've met somebody that loves and appreciates me. Um, we sort of live kind of unconventionally. We see each other once or twice a week, so we look forward to seeing each other. There's
Mm.
no, she's been married too and before, and we don't see why would we want to recreate that situation
Mm.
by being in each other's faces every. So we're enjoying our independence and we're enjoying the time we spend together. Um, and I've been, um, I probably need to go back to my dad passing away 2 years ago, which I watched I watched him sliding away, and I watched him making bad choices. It's some choices or some aspects of aging you have no choice about.
Hmm.
Lots of other aspects of aging you have a lot of choice about. And he
Right.
made he made the wrong decisions. He had a very mild stroke, and then physically really could have used physical therapy, but thought, no, and this is what I mean earlier.
Mm.
No, he said, I don't have the energy for that.
Mm.
So he just became, I said, Dad, they'll have personal trainers that know exactly how to treat somebody your age and your circumstances. No, no, can't be bothered. Anyway, very quickly slid away, became demented. I had to put him into a home remotely. I had to get over to England during COVID. I had my
Oh,
first application denied by the government, which incensed me. I said, my dad's dying. What do you mean I can't go? Remember we had to
mm.
get permission to travel?
Yes. Yes.
Um, Eventually I did, and I was one of 14 people on the airplane. It was the weirdest, and all the seating in the airports was covered in glad wrap.
Yeah.
It was
Wow.
just very dystopian. It was very odd. Anyway, so the big takeaway from that was that I watched my dad make some bad decisions and ultimately die as a consequence, probably
Mm.
earlier than he should have done. He was 78, um, which, I now look at and go, well, hang on, that's 24 years away for me.
Mm.
Now, 20 odd years ago, or 20, whatever it was, 9/11 happened. Now, it was a long time ago, but it almost, to me, it also seems like it was kind of yesterday.
Mm.
So so the scale I'm looking at is, well, I'm one 9/11 away, one 9/11 period of time away from being at the age that my dad died. So what am I waiting for? That's one of the things that's been feeding into what I sort of started this conversation off with. Um, I don't want to make those decisions. Um, and as I think I may have said to you again, I'm suddenly conscious, through the 20s, 30s, 40s, life is a plate glass window. It's you just look through it and you look forever.
Mm-hmm.
Now, all of a sudden, and again, a bit melodramatic, I'll just use my hands and my camera. The frames, the edges of my life are in my peripheral vision.
Right.
I'm just aware of them. They're not coming anytime soon, but they're a bit blurry, but I can see it's no longer a plate glass window. So I do feel in my middle age, which I can't deny anymore, unfortunately, as much as I try. Um, I do feel like I don't have a huge amount of time. If I want to
Mm-hmm.
do stuff and fulfill myself and be true to myself, then I need to get on with it. So the dad thing was a big wake up call, and then I've been I've been sort of slowly part of that renaissance. I took acting classes, wanted to go back to my core, which I talked about as being kind of abandoned to start family, and um, back to the core that feels more like me than the
Mm-hmm.
designer that's in me. So I've been in a number of TV ads and a couple of short films, um, and and then I had another defining moment, with a bit of a name drop moment, I'm afraid, but I may as well. Do you know an actor called Brian Cox who was in Succession? Have you watched
No,
Succession?
no, I don't think so.
Do you know the show?
No, no, I don't.
Oh my God,
I,
Harry,
I don't
big.
I don't watch that much TV.
Okay, well that's a
I'll take
cracker.
that as a compliment.
It's a
Okay.
cracking.
Succession. Got it.
He's a big movie star as well, but he was in Succession and won Emmy and blah blah blah. He was an old family friend, and I caught
Mhm.
up with him. He came to Melbourne, and I caught up with him. Cutting a long story short, I just had that old wise man moment. I mean, he's
Mhm.
probably one of the greatest living actors right now. You
Okay.
know,
Yeah.
he's Shakespearean, RSC trained. He's been in every third movie out of Hollywood for God knows how long. From
Mhm.
Bourne Supremacy to Troy, he was opposite Brad Pitt. I mean, it's insane. And he just said to me when I talked about this sort of need I have in me to get back to my core. He said, "Why don't you pick up your dad's torch and run with it?" And
Mm.
I will. It was just one of those moments, that if you actually act on that advice, that I will always look back at that defining moment from the old wise man.
Mhm.
Um, so I'm feeling quite compelled to continue this. And then I thought, well, it would be nice to do some more TV. And it will also be nice to go to a wedding. I was staring out of my window, and the next day my phone rang. Talk about universe,
Mhm.
listening and making shit happen. There's an old client friend of mine who's become an agent, and she just said, first of all, I want to invite you to my wedding. I went, oh my God, I was just thinking of yesterday about how I wanted to go to a wedding. And I said, well, that's amazing. And then she said, I also want to let you know that I put your name forward for a brand new reality TV show called The Summit. Now, if you don't watch TV, then you're not
No.
even going to know what I'm talking
You're gonna have
about.
to
But
tell me what it is.
anyway, basically, Channel Nine's big new adventure reality show, right?
Got it.
Survivor on a Mountain. It's probably one way of putting it.
Mhm.
And she said, "Are you, how about that?" And I went, "Yeah, great." And then I went through all the process of interviews and casting, and from God knows how many people had applied for it, and they called me and said, "You're on." So I was uh, Josh from season one of the Summit, and season two is
Mhm.
currently on air now, so it's a thing. So that was like, you know, how did that happen? I felt like my dad was pulling some strings, to be honest,
Yeah.
up in the
Well.
ether somewhere, and I really want to sort of take that and keep the momentum, keep the momentum going. Um, I should say that part of that renaissance as well was climbing mountains. I've climbed four of the seven summits
Okay.
in the world. So big monster high altitude mountains. And I think that, and obviously took my son to Kilimanjaro, which is a whole nother story. But in terms of a parenting experience, because it's kind of dangerous actually. um, So yeah, I've got a play that I'm going to be acting in at the Melbourne Fringe this year in October, which again is pushing myself right out of my comfort zone to be on stage, which I was once upon a time, when I was 20, at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, but not since
Mhm.
then. So yeah, there's quite a bit going on, but that's an example of stuff that I have to have on the horizon. And the
Mm.
comfort, it doesn't get more uncomfort zone
No,
than
you've definitely
producing
changed.
and acting in a play, when you
You've
haven't done
definitely
it for
changed
years.
the rhythm, right? And from
Yeah, totally,
where
totally.
you were before the hellhole, and then obviously where you were in the hellhole, you're listening to an entirely
Well, the
different thing now.
hellhole allowed me time to truly go introspective and asked myself a lot of questions, one of which, as I've already told you, was how happy are you? How happy
Mm-hmm.
am I? You know, which is not something I'd ever asked myself. Um, so it was a very important hole in the end, um, even though it felt like it was going to kill me. I learned an awful lot, and interestingly, I also learned an awful lot about women. You know, I went to an all boys school in England. You know, I a couple of girlfriends at that uni that I told you I was at for a year, and then I kind of got married. So I'd only really known the love of one woman for 23 years. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a lot to learn. And I think the universe, all of that dating, I pretty much dated every archetype of female that there is. So I got a huge education, which again, as awful as the period of time it was, I would never have, you know, uh, that was a good outcome. Didn't feel like it at the time. Um, so yes, got to keep things alive, keep things a little bit edgy, a little bit have that tingle, that little tingle of excitement and nerves. That's kind of what I'm. That's my sweet spot. That's my goal for the
I was about
moving
I was
forward.
about to ask the question, well, how happy are you now? But in the last 2 minutes, for anyone who's listening and not watching, Josh has had this this childish smile on his face, like almost giggling about, um, like almost giggling about just how much more satisfying life is now than today, and how much more content you are.
Look, I think so. It's a journey, and as I said, I don't think it's one you can jump. There's aspects of being with a partner and raising a family. If that's what you choose to do, then there's just you can't do it all. You know, you
Mm,
can't do it all. But that's why I'm not keen to remarry. I'm not, because I've ticked the box.
hmm
You know, I'm now free to be me with the least amount of compromise, and compromise is not a bad thing.
hmm
You know, it's important, but I've never felt more free to be myself now, and you can call that selfish. um, but ultimately we do have to look after ourselves. Yes, there are people around you that you love, and of course you have to look after them too, but you can't look after them if you don't look after yourself. And that was the issue that I had in that hole. I couldn't be a parent because I wasn't looking after myself. How could I
mm.
look after them?
Is that where the courage and braveness comes into the whole picture? I'm thinking back to the definition of success you shared at the beginning, and is we were talking a lot about you got to have courage, you've got to be brave, you got to pursue the discomfort or get out of the comfort zone. You said, and
That's it. That's the bravery, and be brave enough to want to do that,
mm,
because it's not just other people that everybody has the potential to live the best version of themselves, whatever that might be. And maybe the best version of yourself is doing nothing, but I doubt it. Most people have aspirations, or would never admit it, but they might be slightly envious of the way other people live their lives, and they think, oh, I'd like to, but oh no, it's not really my life. Maybe it is, maybe it can be, but you just have to give it some space. Let it breathe, let it percolate, and then be brave and just do it. And what's the worst that can happen? This play I'm going to do, the worst that can happen is that it's shit, that I'm rubbish.
hmm
Um, who cares? I mean, who was that? There was a movie made about a lady that thought she was an opera singer. Remember that? I can't remember what it was, but she couldn't sing. It was awful. It was embarrassing. But she thought she was a diva, an opera singer, and I think she was quite wealthy, and she paid for these productions for her to star in, and it was
right.
excruciating. But who cares? And um, ultimately people respected her because she was doing what made her happy.
hmm
So that's the worst. The worst. It's the fear of failure is crippling, and part of being brave is not giving a shit, not giving a rat's.
Yeah,
Who
okay.
cares?
You mentioned earlier on, you mentioned about the toolkit. You've got these tools now, which you didn't have while you were in the hellhole, and
Didn't
you've
have when I
got
was
now.
younger either.
Yeah,
Just
okay.
didn't have them. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. What's your toolkit now? This might be a nice place to
Uh,
round out the
yeah.
conversation and leave some practical tips for the
Well,
listeners.
the toolkit is the realization of almost everything I've told you, because
Hmm.
what everything we've talked about has been a realization which has come from experience and time. That's it. Yeah, that is it. My toolkit I've earned through my life experience. And it's not a
Okay.
toolkit you can go out and buy before you've had that experience. You're not qualified. You don't qualify for those tools until you've lived a little bit. And as I
So your
said,
advice is go and get divorced by your spouse. That's the advice.
no, no, no. Advice is to be brave and live. Just live your best life, and don't be afraid of failure. Chase those dreams. Be spontaneous. Uh, Recognize when you're in a rhythm which is actually detrimental to your progress. Because half the time you're not even aware of it because you don't stop to think about it. You don't stop to think with a partner to talk about it. It's just taking a moment. Life's so fast paced, so much stuff's all happening. You just have to occasionally just take a step back and just do a little health check.
Hmm.
That's it.
What would you do in that health check? Because like you gave an example of what's in your toolbox, right? You started one of the things that you focus on is this idea of uh, like how bored you are. Like if you're feeling bored, that's the time that you got to go and do something. You got to find something on the horizon. You got to take some action. That's clearly one of the things in your toolkit. And it sounds like you got this bit of a health check. And how bored are you is on a scale of 0 to 10 is probably in that health check as well.
I can
What
live
what
with
else
being
is on
bored
there?
for a period of time, and then it gets just so loud that it's not good enough, you know.
Hmm.
And then I have to do something. It empowers me to get off my ass, pull my finger out, and do something, you know. And that reality TV show was so off the wall, bonkers, so left
Hmm.
of field, so out of the comfort zone, but I did it, you know.
Hmm.
I did it. So again, part of that life experience is doing it, realizing you can do it. So the next time something comes along, it's less confronting, and you're more likely to do it, you know, and do it better because you're not doubting yourself. So not sure if that
No,
answers that
it
last
kind it
question.
kind of does. But I mean, like I want to dig a bit deeper because I'm sure there's some even more gold in here for the listeners who have stuck with us. The no, like, and I think that most probably I believe that most have.
Poor listeners stuck
Four
with us.
listeners stuck with us. Um, no, you're talking about this, like you mentioned that you got the toolkit. You're saying that you've built it up through the life experience, kind of like you've just done enough reps and now you're able to lift heavy stuff. But I'm sure that there are techniques that you've learned along the way, and there are things that can be shortcuts as well. Like you could, if we spend enough time together, you'd be able to shorten the journey of what I would need to learn to be able to get to where you are by a considerable amount of time. Like in terms of
Look, I think
just
so.
the skill set you have.
I think it might make it more efficient, but I don't know that it would necessarily happen any quicker, if that makes sense.
Mm,
Because as I
okay.
said, there are certain, it's like levels in a game. You know, you don't proceed to level two until you've completed level one.
Hmm.
You can't just jump to level two and go, ah,
No.
screw level one. You have to earn it, you know.
Yeah.
So, and I just think as a young man, there are predetermined levels that I have to achieve. You know, whatever the game that I have to play, the life I have to live, it tells me when I'm completed that level.
Hmm.
Where I could be more efficient is maybe if I move in a certain way. If I have a couple of choreographed moves that allow me to more efficiently cover the ground that I need to cover, maybe that's what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because you don't necessarily know your moves. You may do some moves you didn't even realize you made.
Hmm.
Um, but if someone said, you know what, when you were like this, you were 7% more efficient. It's like, oh, really? Christ, then I'll do that from now on. But then you get to level two and it's a different set of moves. So it's, look, maybe there's, I mean, again, everybody's game and levels and level of levels are all different. Um, but I just don't think that that toolkit that's now available to me as a middle-aged person, um, it wasn't available to me when I was not a middle-aged person. It wasn't available to me 10 years ago. It just wasn't. Not
How
the
would you
one that would allow, not the toolkit that would allow me to pursue everything I've talked to you about. In terms of fulfilling my true potential.
how are you going to help your boys do it? You said they're at the age where they're about to find dad more of a nuisance. Obviously, you want to equip them with every skill that you've possibly developed and all the wisdom that you've gathered.
Yeah,
Uh,
well, look, I'm going to keep having adventures with them because I mean that's when you take teenagers are not really anymore, but you take them out of this world,
mhm.
you take them away from their gadgets. Um, it's it shows them that actually it exposes people because there's not stuff to prop you up. There's not stuff to fall, to lean on in this world that we're in right now. You go on an adventure into the middle of nowhere or climbing and you're exposed to each other. And as I said, we cried together, we laughed together, we experienced failure together and the jubilation of success together. I will hopefully continue to do that for as long as my body allows me to do that. But again, I'm thinking, geez, 15 years maybe. So it's even less time than that 9/11 period of time I talked about earlier. Otherwise, look, I just want them to observe this man who is their father living this way and seeing how happy it makes me, and they can draw their own conclusions from that. I don't want to force a way of living on them, but I would love to be the best version of myself for them to recognize that and be proud of that and have it influence them, in even the smallest possible way.
Thank you. Anything else that you want to share? Like, I mean, I feel like a lot of the time at the end of the conversation, I do a full summary of everything which we've discussed. I don't feel like there's a need for that because at each stage we keep going back and summarizing.
I think so. Yeah, I think so.
I'm more curious from your perspective if there's anything else, like any real points you want to emphasize or add towards this conversation, or the people who've given their time to listen or invested their time to listen.
To be honest, Harry, I think I've probably talked enough. I would, if questions are born from this, I'm more than happy to, answer questions offline or online or however it works. I don't know if you ever do that, because I feel like we've talked about quite a lot of things.
Yeah.
But no, I would just be repeating myself now, I think.
Yeah, okay. And so the emphasis in all of this is basically to pursue a life of being more brave, of having more courage, of doing the things that make you less comfortable and take you away from the places that you are comfortable, to not just accept the status quo of where you're living and to change the rhythm of how you're living as well.
Yeah, look, pretty much. I'm just a believer that by allowing yourself to be a bit uncomfortable is when you learn a little bit more. You learn a little bit more, and that influences how you behave. How that influences the people around you as well. The more you know yourself, the more life experience you have, the more resilient you become. The more you influence. You just, so it's all incremental stuff, but. Yeah, the biggest thing is just not turning your back on yourself just because you're, middle-aged and, no things are no longer relevant when, yes, they can be as relevant as you want them to be.
Thank you. So I hope you received a whole lot of value from engaging in that conversation. What were the key takeaways for you? What can you schedule in your life right now to make sure that the time you just invested into listening to this exceptional conversation with this amazing mentor and this amazing individual is time that wasn't misused, but was time that you've allocated properly to enhancing your life and improving it? Whatever it is, schedule it now, practice it now. Be the successful person you're meant to be. Live with purpose.